welcome back to the module. Today we're looking at session 4. We're looking at selection constructs. Let's get started by looking at the session objectives. By the end of this session, participants will be in a position to explain the if statement, also explain the if-else selection constructs. You'll also be in a position to explain the multiple selection statements, explain the nested if-else statements, and finally to explain the case constructs. Let's get started. Introduction. You as a programmer may come across a condition in the program where the path of the execution can branch into two or more options, and such constructs are referred to as programming, selection, conditional, or branching constructs. And basically you can see an illustration here of the normal program flow. We usually start at one point, then progress, go all the way up to the end. And at times we may need to make decisions. How do we make decisions? Let's see. We have the if statement, and the if construct is a basic selection construct. Consider an example where the customer is given a discount if purchases of over $100 are made. Now, each time the customer is billed, a part of the code has to check if the bill amount exceeds $100. If it does exceed the amount, then it must deduct 10% of the total amount, else nothing must be deducted. Okay? We have the pseudocode for the previous scenario, and let's see what happens. We start with the if keyword. Then, if customer purchases items more than $100, give 10% discount. The general form of an if statement or construct is as follows. If, condition, then statements, and then end if. Let's explain this. We have the if keyword, then the condition which is to be satisfied or met. An example could be in the present scenario, we want to find out if a customer has made shopping worth more than $100. It could be you want to find out if a student has passed or failed an exam based on a given score. Once this condition is met, we have the statements which are going to be executed. This is what you're calling the body of the if construct. Once you finish executing everything inside here, you end the if construct. Let's move on. The example is the if construct to find out whether a number is odd or even, and here we're using pseudocode. We have the begin keyword. We read in a number from the user. Then we have this variable called rem. Rem is just short for remainder. What is happening here is that we are taking the number modulus or modulo 2. Modulus, basically what it does is that it does the normal division. And after doing the normal divisions, we basically take the remainder and assign it to this rem. Okay? And we don't do the one for decimal points. It's just the normal old arithmetic you learned before you learned how to deal with decimal points. Okay. Now, if the remainder equals 0, we display number is even. Then we end if and end the whole pseudocode. Let's move on. We have the flowchart for the previous pseudocode, and let's see what exactly is happening here. We start and then we get the input number from the user. Then we do the calculation here. Then we come here and check, is the remainder equal to 0? Then we display that is an even number. And finally we stop. Now the syntax for the if statement in the C programming language is given here. Now please note that this is not pseudocode. This is actual C programming code. Okay. We have the if keyword, then the condition which is to be evaluated or tested. Then we have the opening curly bracket or curly brace, and we have several statements inside here, then the closing curly brace. We move on. Now in this slide, we can see that we get the implementation of the previous pseudocode implemented in the C programming language. Let's go through this very quickly. At the very top, we have a comment. We'll see this later once we start this actual C programming language. We have the preprocessor directive. Then the main function begins program execution. We have the opening curly brace for the main method. We declare two variables of type int, that is number and the remainder. We prompt the user to enter a number via the printf function. We read in the number via the scanf function and store it in this variable. Then we do the calculation. We take number modulus 2, assign the remainder to the variable rem. Then we come inside here, the if statement and check whether the remainder is equal to 0. Notice we're using a double equal sign. Then this is the opening curly brace for the if statement. We output even number. This sends the if statement, and this finally closes the opening curly brace for the main function, and the program terminates or ends. The next is the if-else statement. The if-else statement enables a programmer to make a single comparison, then execute the steps depending on whether the result of the comparison is true or false. The general form of the if-else statement is as follows. If condition, then statement set 1, else statement set 2. Then you end the if statement. The syntax for the if-else construct in the C programming language is given below. We start like in the previous example. If the condition which is to be tested or evaluated, then inside the curly braces we have the statement, can be a single statement or multiple statements. If this condition is not true, what usually happens is that we execute the alternative. Else, we have the opening curly brace, then we execute the statements and we close the corresponding curly brace. Now, a more efficient code for the even number using the if-else statement is shown in the following example. If you recall, in the previous example, we only had even numbers. We didn't take the case where the remainder was something else. Let's go through this pseudocode quickly. Begin, we read in the number or input the number. We do the calculation and assign the result to the remainder. We check whether the remainder is 0. When this evaluates to true, we display even number. If this condition is not met, or when this condition is not met, we display that it's an odd number. We end the if and we end the pseudocode. We have the flowchart for the previous pseudocode. We begin, we get the number from the user, we do the calculation and assign the result to the remainder. We come here and make a decision. We check whether the remainder is 0. Once the remainder is 0, then this is the path we are going to take. You can see the flow line is taking you to display even number. After that, your program ends. When the remainder is not 0, then we have the alternative flow line. We tell the user that the number is odd and our program ends. Okay. Now, what about if you want to combine some conditions? Let's see what usually happens. Multiple selection statements. The AND statement can be used in conjunction with the if statement for more than one condition. And let's look at this example where we want to classify a supplier as a most valuable supplier, that is MVS. Okay, for the basketballers, forget about MVP. The organization must check that the supplier has been with them for at least 10 years and has done a total business of more than $500,000. These two conditions must be satisfied in order to consider a supplier as an MVS. Now you can see what is happening here. There are two conditions. The first one, the duration must be more than 10 years. The amount must be more than 500,000. Okay, so we are using the AND to combine these two. The example shows the pseudocode for this particular scenario. Begin, we read in the years from the user. We also read in the amount of business done. We get into the if statement. The condition to be checked is given here. This is what is most important. We want to check whether the years with us is greater than or equal to 10 and the business done is greater than or equal to 500,000. Okay. When this condition is fulfilled, then we display this as an MVS. Else we tell the supplier that a little more effort is required and we end the if and finally we end our pseudocode. Now in this slide, we can see that the example shows the pseudocode implementation in C. We have a comment at the very top here. and we have the if statement. This is the condition to be satisfied or to be met. Yes with us greater than or equal to 10. This is how we write the and using the double ampersand. This is called an ampersand. The next thing we're checking is business done greater than or equal to 500,000. Then we display classified as an MVS. Else we display a little more effort is required. Is there any other way of going about this? Let's see. We have what is called a nested if-else statement. And another way to combine two conditions without using the AND operator is by using the nested if-else statement. A nested if is an if statement written inside another if statement. That is what we call nesting in programming. And it applies to other constructs we'll see later on. Consider the earlier example to recognize the MVS status of a supplier rewritten using the nested if. We begin, we prompt the user for the number of years they've been doing business with us. We also get the amount of business. Then after that, we check whether this is greater than or equal to 10. Now, when this condition is met, that is when we are going to execute this code inside here. If this condition is not met, then we'll directly skip to this part of the code. Okay. Now, assuming that we have a number like 12, it means that 12 is greater than 10. We get inside here and we check. If the amount given to us by the user exceeds 500,000, then that is when we're going to tell them classified as an MVS. Now, if let's say this amount is 450,000, we are going to execute the else and we tell the supplier that a little more effort is required and our program terminates. As mentioned earlier, if this condition was not met, we will just tell the supplier that a little more effort is required. We end the if statement and we end the program. Let's look at the flow chart. Okay. We begin our program. We read in the years with us and the amount of business done. Then we come here and check whether the years with us is greater than or equal to 10. If this condition is not true, we tell them a little more effort is required. Then our program ends. Now, the second scenario is whereby this is true. The next check we need to do is to find out if the amount is greater than or equal to 500,000. If this is not true, we just tell them a little more effort is required and the program ends. If this is true, then we basically tell them they are classified as an MVS and the program terminates. What about if you have so many conditions to be evaluated? How do you go about this? We use the case condition. Now, the do case and case construct is used when a variable is to be successively compared against different values. The do case is known as the switch case in C, and the other languages we'll be looking at later on in the course. And this is when you have so many conditions which are to be evaluated. An example could be something like days of the week. You could also have the letters of the alphabet or something like that. Let's move on. The syntax for the case condition in the C programming language is given below. We have switch, then the expression which is to be evaluated. We open the curly bracket, or curly bracket. We have the first case condition. And remember, we've said this can be several cases to be evaluated. Here we are just only using two for illustration purposes. Case constant expression, we have the statement set, then we have the break keyword. The break keyword is actually used since if we don't have the break statement, we are going to execute everything. Now, to stop the code from further execution, we use the break keyword. We go to the second case to be evaluated. We execute the statement set. And remember, we've said this can be several. Examples, we've said letters of the alphabet. We've talked about weekdays. You can have the compass directions and many other expressions which can be evaluated depending upon the complexity of your program. We have this default case, which is optional, and the statement set which are to be executed. And finally, we end the switch case via the closing curly bracket or curly brace. So with that, we've come to the end of the session. Let's go through the summary of what it is we have learned. 1. Conditions in a program where the path of the execution may branch into two or more options are referred to as programming selection conditional or branching constructs. The basic selection construct is an if construct. The if-else construct enables the programmer to make single comparison and then execute some steps based on the outcome. The AND statement can be used in conjunction with the if statement when more than one condition is to be checked. A nested if is an if statement inside another if statement. The do case construct is used when a variable is to be successively compared against different values. The break statement breaks out of the switch case construct and continues execution at the instruction following the construct. With that, we've come to the end of the session, and have yourselves a nice time. God bless. Bye.